Hey, if you're enjoying this show, consider supporting us on our Patreon. You can get cool perks like access to these episodes a week before they go public, and you can pick an album for us to review. Any support is greatly appreciated, so if you feel inclined, go to patreon.com/polyphonicpress.
This is Polyphonic Press, the podcast where two music fans pick a classic album completely at random and analyse it track by track. Using the patented random album generator, they are given an album to review from a curated list of over 1,000 classic releases, spanning multiple genres. And now onto the show. Here are your hosts, Jeremy Boyd and John Van Dyke.
Hey, welcome to Polyphonic Press. I'm Jeremy Boyd.
And I'm John Van Dyke.
And basically, if you don't know how the show works, we have no idea what album we're going to be listening to. We review classic albums and we pick them completely at random. We've got a program to pick the album for us. So all we have to do is click the button. So let's hit the button.
The list is a compilation of a whole bunch of different lists of classic albums thrown in. I just don't know if that's been clarified.
Yeah, I took it from the 1001 albums you must hear before you die, Rolling Stone's 500 greatest albums of all time, and obviously there's going to be overlaps between the two, but I figured we'd cover all our bases by pulling it from that, and I think there was another list too, so we've got a lot of albums to go through. But let's hit the button here and see what album we're going to be listening to this week.
The RAG. Let's see what the RAG will tell us. The random album generator.
Oh, yes. And the album we're going to be listening to is The Band. Cool. All right. This is actually, I should clarify, this is actually an album I am familiar with. Like, I have heard this album.
I think I might have heard at least certainly parts of it, and it was probably a while ago. Although, you know, there's songs from this album all over the radio, even to this day.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, so The Band is the self-titled second studio album by The Band. Basically, if you don't know, The Band were a group of musicians who started out as a backing band for various artists. Most notably was Ronnie Hawkins. They were known as Ronnie and the Hawks. And they eventually ended up backing Bob Dylan on his 1965-66 tour, the famous tour where Dylan went electric and everybody got pissed off at him.
Which happens to be my favorite period for Bob Dylan. Yeah.
Those three albums, Highway 61, Blonde on Blonde, and Bringing It All Back Home. Those three albums are my favorite of Dylan's. But anyway, so I think by 1968, they decided they wanted to, well, I think what actually happened was Bob Dylan, the tour got cut short. Bob Dylan got into a motorcycle accident and had to cancel the rest of the tour. And so they decided, we're going to go in and record some stuff on our own. We've been writing songs, and what came out was their debut album was, songs from Big Pink. And Big Pink was this big pink house in the middle of nowhere in upstate New York. And I think this album was recorded there too. But it was just a house that they lived in, and they put in a recording studio in the basement, and that's where they made their first album anyway.
And also recorded the famous basement tapes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this album, this is the follow-up to that album. It's the second studio released. It is known as the Brown album because the cover is brown.
They're really original.
Yes.
When it comes at least to their album namings.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So what is it? After unsuccessfully attempting sessions at a studio in New York, the band set up shop in the pool house of a home rented by the group in the Hollywood Hits. Okay, so this was mostly recorded in Los Angeles. I thought.
Okay.
At Big Pink. Okay. Where was it? Located at 8850 Evanview Drive in Los Angeles. Oh, that's interesting. The home was once owned by Judy Garland and Willie Cox, and at the time the group
Wally Cox.
Wally Cox. The group worked there. It was owned by Sammy Davis Jr. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So I mean, this album has a lot of the band's classics, like Up on Cripple Creek, The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down, Rag Mama Rag. Basically the radio staples that you hear. Okay, so the first song is called Across the Great Divide. So here we go. I always like that song, and it's it's a pretty I guess positive and uplifting feeling to it, and I like the sort of the interplay between the organ and the horns.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, the horn sections around this period have never sounded better, in my opinion. Horn sections just sound so great from the late 60s, early 70s. There's several bands that use them, and I don't ever remember hearing them recorded poorly or anything. They just have this particular sound when you think of like early Chicago and Blood, Sweat, and Tears and Cold Blood, stuff like that. I just love that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the band, like they're great musicians, and this was obviously recorded. I think they recorded most of their stuff live,
off the floor,
live off the floor, and like it's a simple recording in the sense that there's not a whole lot of there's not a lot of fluff, I guess. It's just, meat and potatoes kind of stuff with some the horns added a little bit, but it's not in your face. They're just kind of tasteful. I don't know what else to say about it, really. I mean, it's just, these guys are great. It's a great song, and
it's a good opening track.
Good opening track. Yeah.
Yeah, that one wasn't a hit, not that I'm aware of.
That was never a hit, but it's a popular song.
Yeah.
But it's not, it wasn't one of their bigger hits or anything like that. But yeah. But it's a song that I always liked. So, yeah.
Alrighty then.
All right. So the next song is called Rag Mama Rag. I love that. I always like that ending. That it obviously they were gonna
maybe
fade it out or something
and jam it out, and the piano player with Garth Hudson was just kind of caught off guard, so he's just up in the higher keys and he just kept going for a bit. Yep.
Yeah. Again, a really simple arrangement. I always love the fiddles in there, the two fiddles,
the tuba.
The tuba,
of a bass line.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I always thought that was cool. And it's just a throwback to, I don't know if it would be like honky tonk or something.
Ragtime.
Ragtime, yeah. Yeah.
I got to say, Levon Helm's drum playing and that is pretty spot on. It's a really dry drum sound.
It is.
But he's fantastic.
And the breaks that he was doing, the fills that he was playing, it's like, oh, he's really on top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's one of my favorite drummers. And if you ever watch The Last Waltz, just watching him play the drums, I've never seen anyone just look so natural playing an instrument. It's just like
although I always thought that maybe his neck would get a little sore after a while.
Because he's leaning.
He's always got his head turned
to almost sing into the microphone.
Yeah, and it looks like it's turned at quite an angle. I would have placed the microphone a little bit more in front of me personally.
Yeah.
But I don't know. He always did that for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Whatever he's comfortable with, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you don't get a lot of lead singer drummers, really.
You got Phil Collins. That's the only other one I can really think of off the top of my head. Phil
Collins and maybe Don Henley.
Okay.
But yeah, you don't get, and okay, playing the drums and singing lead is hard to do. Because it's easy to get lost. You know, drumming takes up, you know, at least all of your limbs, really. So you have to keep the time with that, and then sing on top of that. It's really tricky to do. So there aren't a lot of drummer lead singers.
I think even singing backup as a drummer, you oftentimes you see the one person without a microphone as the drummer. It's not always the case, though.
Yeah.
I think of Roger Taylor. He always had a microphone.
Mm-hmm. He's a great backup singer.
Yeah. I know, and sometimes lead singer.
Yeah.
Who else was I thinking? Somebody else came to mind. I lost them though. Whatever.
But yeah, no, it's singing and playing drums is not an easy thing to do. No, I respect anybody who can pull it off. Really, I mean, singing and strumming chords is you know, it's not easy, but it's easier. But playing a riff on a guitar and trying to sing at the same time, that can get pretty tricky.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah. It takes practice to get that good.
Yeah. It's something I maybe should mention because it suddenly came to my head. Like back in their Hawks days, like my grandfather used to hang out he used to hang out at a place called Crane Plaza, which is just north of Toronto. Mm-hmm. And apparently the Hawks played there all the time.
Oh yeah.
And this is in late 50s, I guess. So my grandfather would oftentimes, he didn't know them really well, but he would sometimes talk to them after shows and stuff like that. Because my grandfather was, there was another band around called, actually my uncle or my great uncle, was a guitar player in this band. What were they called? The Canadian Meteors. I'm trying to think of the guy's name. Damn it. The name's not coming to me. And I heard that the 45 not even that long ago, or found it on YouTube. But yeah, anyway, my grandfather used to drive them around. His 49 Ford with barely no floor, and it used to be basically their band van.
Cool.
And he took out it was a business coupe, so it had no back seat anyway. So he took out the supports for that would be through between the trunk and where the back seat would normally be. There's like these cross braces. Mm-hmm. He took them out so they could stick the stand-up bass right through.
Oh, yeah.
So as they're driving, like the stand-up bass is sitting in the trunk, but the neck is way up.
Right.
Then it had no case. It was just in there.
It's just in there, shoved in there. The neck is right up next to my grandfather as he's driving. Yeah.
Yeah, that was basically the car that he would drive this band around all over the place. But yeah, that was sort of the scene back in the day.
Before vans.
Before vans. Well, there were sedan deliveries, and my grandfather had one of those later, but he didn't have one at the time.
Right.
But no, the Hawks were around for, decades. They were still part of the Toronto scene even as late as, they would still be around in the late 60s sometimes.
One of the, that just reminded me of an interesting story, that I saw an interview with Robbie Robertson. And I don't know if they were playing with Ronnie Hawkins or somebody else, but they were playing down in Dallas, Texas. Mm-hmm. And they were playing in a club, and they were playing, the owner of the club was Jack Ruby. Mm-hmm. And if you know who Jack Ruby is, he's the one who shot Lee Harvey Oswald after he was arrested for assassinating John F. Kennedy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was this was like a year before that happened. So they weren't involved or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, all of a sudden Jack Ruby's a household name for killing Lee Harvey Oswald. It's like, wait, we worked with that guy.
Yeah. So wait, was this in like what year would this have been? Like, because Lee Harvey Oswald, when was he caught? Like, this would have been.
Well, Kennedy was assassinated in November 63.
Yeah.
So this, the whole thing happened within days. So that was November of 63 when Oswald was so it must have been 62.
So this would have been, they were still touring with Ronnie Hawkins then.
Yeah, it must have been.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So they were playing a club that was owned by,
Jack Ruby. Yeah. Yeah. Weird.
Yeah, well,
And Jack Ruby had ties to the mafia, and it was like a mafia-run club kind of thing.
But he was pissed off that he shot Kennedy. I guess.
I don't want to get into the whole conspiracy theory of it right now, but basically, yeah, he might have been contracted to take care of.
Gotcha.
Oswald. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I was remembering another story about the Hawks. And I think I probably mentioned this back when we were doing the other podcast. I was talking about the Mynah Birds.
Mm-hmm.
When so those of you listening, if you're not aware, the Mynah Birds was a band from the Yorkville days of Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Neil Young on guitar. There's a few other people. There's a couple of other like Buffalo Springfield guys, and I can't remember who else. And but the Rick James, yes, that Rick James was the lead singer.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are going, "What?" I just know it because that is such a crazy story.
Yeah.
But when Rick James first showed up in Toronto, he was in a bar. He was draft dodging.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he was in Toronto. He wound up in a bar or something, got in a fight with somebody. He got beaten up really, really bad. So he was basically just laying on the street on, I think it was like King Street or something like that. And I think it was like Levon Helm and Garth Hudson happened to stumble upon him. And they got him up and helped him and cleaned him up and whatever.
See, the thing is,
that's how he got introduced to the music scene in Toronto.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But the thing is, if you're draft dodging and trying to get away, you probably want to keep a low profile and not get into fights.
Yeah, but this is Rick James.
I know.
So, he's in a band with Neil Young, and they decide, they're getting a bit of a following, so they go to Michigan to record their single.
Yeah.
And of course they're only there, they record like 2 or 3 songs, and then of course he gets picked up for draft dodging.
Yeah. It's like, don't go back to the States.
First rule for draft dodging, don't go back to the States.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, whatever. Anyway, that was his first arrest that we're aware of.
Yeah.
We know that was certainly not his last.
Not his last. No.
But yeah.
That's for sure.
The rap sheet begins.
Yeah.
And yeah, so Mynah Birds basically dissolve at that point, and Neil Young and what's his name, the bass player, hop in Neil Young's hearse, drive to California, and
Stephen Stills, and
exactly
the rest of it. Yeah.
So that's how that story goes.
It's all connected.
But yeah, if it wasn't for Garth Hudson and Levon Helm discovering him, you might not even know who Rick James is.
Yeah. Very true.
Yep. Crazy story. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, the next song on the album is probably one of their bigger and better known songs. It's called "The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down."
I like the harmonica in the background in parts.
Yeah.
It sort of gives it a bit of a haunting flavor, but it's like a country-ish old-timey haunting flavor. Mm-hmm. It's not like a theremin.
Yeah.
It's a bit different.
Yeah. Again, I mean, like these songs, the recordings, they're really sparse, but I mean, all it is a piano, bass, drums, and guitar. You don't really want anything too modern on there. So the instruments really just kind of fit the mood of the song. It's a well-written song. It's always been one of my favorites. I know it's a crowd pleaser whenever they would play it. They would close every show with it, I think. And
yeah, they would. It's interesting. It's only the third song on the album.
Yeah.
They put it pretty early on this album for some reason. Yeah. But I guess they found it just sort of worked really well at the end of shows.
Mm-hmm. I guess we'll move on to the next one. The next song is called When You Awake. All right. I have a few things to say about that song. Didn't capture me as much as the other ones. It's an okay song. It kind of faded out at a weird point where he's still singing.
Yeah, I think it was basically the song was finished and it was sort of like a fade out. I like the opening of it. Mm-hmm. It captured my attention, but the song didn't keep my attention the same way. That was sort of the thing. Yeah. The guitar tone on it, I mean, I just love things like that. And of course that organ in there and behind, it's just that combination always does it for me. Mm-hmm. But it was a little bit of it's not one of the the prime cuts on this particular slab of meat.
The one thing that I thought was cool though was the way the drums were recorded, and it sounded like they were using just a microphone in a room rather than having them close mic'd. And I thought that was kind of cool. It sounded cool, and it gave the song some room, I guess. I like that, but I mean, yeah, it's just kind of an underwhelming song, I guess. It's not.
It's got to happen once in a while.
Yeah, every. I don't think there's a band or an artist that doesn't have a subpar song. It's just the way it's going to happen. So yeah. I don't want to spend too much time on the negatives, so let's move on to the next one.
This one is a hit for sure. This
one is a hit. Probably
it's up there.
Either this one or The Wait are the two
biggest
songs that are their biggest hits, probably. Mm-hmm. So this is Up on Cripple Creek. Yeah, I always like that song too.
One of the more interesting intros, and it's instantly identifiable, but I always thought the intro was a little bit strange, but not in a bad way. I kind of always liked it.
Yeah.
It's a funky sort of thing.
Yeah. So apparently that the clavinet that Garth Hudson was playing with the wah-wah, the sound they were trying to get was like those, what are they called?
Oh, jaw harp.
Jaw harp. That's the sound that they were trying to get with that, because they wanted that in the song, but nobody. I guess no one. I don't think it was being. It wasn't coming out right on the recording, so they had to kind of fake it with the clavinet.
It doesn't really sound like that. It has its own sort of sound.
Yeah,
honestly,
that's what they were trying.
That's what they were trying to go for. But they wound up sort of creating this other sort of funky thing, which honestly is a very 70s sound. Mm-hmm. You would hear it a little bit more throughout the 70s.
Yeah. Probably the most famous is Superstition by Stevie Wonder. Yeah. That's probably the most famous sound. And you would also hear it in a lot of you would hear it in a lot of like blaxploitation films and a lot of like cop shows, and it was pretty ubiquitous in the 70s.
Yeah, The clavinet and the wah pedal, like either separately or together.
Yeah.
Sort of, yeah. True. Shaft, but that's just the one wah pedal. But still.
Muted guitar, yeah.
You sort of get the idea. Oh, and porn soundtracks.
Oh, yeah.
Evidently.
Yes.
Not that I would know.
This and I don't know if this was maybe one of the first songs to use the clavinet. Because when do you know? I don't know anything about it. Like, when was it invented?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I think it's earlier than that, because I think it's basically an electric version of like a harpsichord sort of thing, I think is what they were going for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not 100% sure. I'm a little bit, that's a bit of a gap in my knowledge when it comes to vintage equipment.
Yeah.
It'd be worth looking up. Anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know. Obviously, it was around by like 68, 69 when they were using this. I'm sure it's earlier than that.
Probably, yeah.
I doubt the first time a clavinet would be used would be trying to mimic a jaw harp.
No, probably not.
It might be one of the first times it's used in a contemporary rock setting.
Yeah.
Sort of. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
So I just looked it up. The clavinet was invented in Germany in 1964.
Oh, there you go. It's only about 5 years old at the time then.
Yeah, so it was still a pretty new instrument.
Yeah.
When they were using it, but still, I mean, it probably you know what it probably was? It was probably Garth Hudson having a new toy, wanting to play with it.
That's always part of it.
Yeah.
If it's not all of it, it's part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need a jaw harp. I got a thing that sort of sounds like a jaw harp. Well, it doesn't really say. It sounds a bit like a jaw harp. It's not really that much. It sounds a bit like a jaw harp.
Probably.
See, well, it does sound kind of cool.
Yeah. That's probably exactly how. Anyway, yeah, the guitar work on this song has always been really good. I mean, Robbie Robertson, I think he's an underrated guitar player.
He's understated and underrated. Yes.
Yeah.
He's not like a flashy guitar player, but he's tasty. He knows what he's doing, and he never does more than what's like needed for a song or something like that.
Yeah.
Which takes restraint, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he's a fantastic songwriter as well. Yep, he's cool.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. The next song is called Whispering Pines. Awesome. That was Richard Manuel singing that. He's a great voice. I wish they'd used him more.
He did use him quite a bit. I know. I've heard him in quite a few things. I'm trying to think. There's one song that they're known for that he sings, and I can't remember which one it is. Yeah, I don't remember which one that was. Anyway, one thing that, again, caught my attention was that, I'm not sure what kind of organ. Sounds almost Farfisa-ish, or it could be something like a Vox Continental or something like that in the background, sort of like carrying it, but at times it swells and it gets a little dirty, and I kind of like that. Yeah. It sounds really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that too. And it's it's not like in your face or anything. It's just, it's just creating an atmosphere.
Right.
The other thing that I liked too is on the last verse, they were doing like a call and response kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the the first vocal was like washed in reverb, and this it sounded very distant, and then the response was like up close. And I thought that was a really cool sort of juxtaposition that they did. I thought that was a really cool effect.
Yeah, well, it sounded like Richard's voice. It's the one that was the lead that was doing he had the reverb on there. His had the presence.
Yeah.
But he had the reverb on there. But then there was Levon Helm, which was a little bit pared back. Yeah. But it was a drier vocal.
Yeah.
It sounded like it was through an older style microphone, but there was no effects on it or anything like that. But it was just sort of like they're kind of responding in the background. Yeah, that was kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, again, the drumming on it. I mean, I think he was using brushes and just playing really softly. Just, you know, it's just a beautiful song, really, and I really liked it. All right, so the next one is called Jemima Surrender. Here we go. Cool.
Yeah, I like that.
That was an awesome song.
I think that one might be my favorite, but I've always liked the funkier stuff.
Yeah.
That guitar line was just awesome. That guitar riff.
No.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I noticed in there, and is there was a saxophone in there, but it was like I don't know if it was like a bass or I
think it's an alto sax, something like that, where it's got that lower end. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good sound for stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always kind of liked that. Saxophones have always been, I mean, sometimes they can be used badly, but when they're used well, they fit it really, really, really nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just really, really good. Good sound. And again, you don't want, you need, they need to be somewhat dry, but you don't want them to, you don't want them too upfront. You don't want them to, taking over, but they make this perfect sort of undercutting sound to the background. It sort of fills in some of the space if you want to fill in that space.
Yeah.
It's just really cool. There was a lyric in there about playing on the Fender, and it suddenly made me remember. I was telling about my great uncle's band. He was one of the first people in certainly the Toronto scene to have a Fender Stratocaster. And this is about 1957. And at one point they were playing a show, and there was a whole bunch of other like rock and rollers coming up from the States and stuff like that, and everybody wanted to play his Stratocaster. So every time they'd call on a new band, there's someone else up on stage with the Stratocaster playing. And these weren't unknown rock and rollers either, so it's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, he was always pawning it for beer, though.
Oh, so got it back and then pawned. Yeah.
I ultimately don't know what happened to it eventually, but I don't think he lost it that way. He might have, but I don't remember. Anyway. It's just another one of those stories. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was 57 was the first year for this?
54 was the first year. So 50. Yeah. And they were basically, it was just a 2-color sunburst for the first little while. And they started introducing custom colors, which is when you get like, what's his name from the Shadows? Actually, he painted his own, because he got I forget what color it was when he got it. I think it was just brown, but it might have been something like a seafoam green. But he wanted red, so he got it painted red. But you got to remember the Stratocaster when it came out was so wildly different than anything else that was out at the time.
Well, it was the first. It was the first guitar designed with ergonomics in mind.
Yes.
You know?
It's true, because even the Telecaster was just like... Jeff Beck had an Esquire that he had... I don't know if he did it, but somebody did anyway, but it had like body contours shaved into it because he was playing it all the time. I think he still has that guitar. It's a really beat up guitar, but he used to use it in the Yardbirds all the time. It's funny when we look back on the Stratocaster, we're almost bored of it because everybody and their uncle's dog has, remade it, good, bad, or indifferent. But yeah, I mean, at the time it was, what the hell is that thing? That doesn't look like a guitar. It looks like a blob from outer space with strings. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's got the even the on the top of the body, it's got the contour where you rest your arm. It's like when my first electric guitar was a Stratocaster, and it is more comfortable to play that than other guitars.
I mean, lots of guitars would put like an arm rest there. And that was how they would deal with that sort of, instead of having like the thing cutting into your arm, they'd have like this sort of like plate thing that you can sort of lay your arm on. That would help. Yeah. But it still had like, there's this gap, especially if you're still playing like a big hollow body. But the Stratocaster is already sort of pretty much formed to your body. And then they rounded everything off, plus gave this contour not only for your belly to sit in, but also for your arm to lay over. The thing was basically just meant to fit a human being.
Yeah.
So... yeah.
It's I can always tell when someone's playing a Strat, like it just has a distinct sound.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's a little hard to pick it from a Telecaster depending on the settings that are on it, but there are certain tones that a Stratocaster does that a Telecaster won't do, and there's certain sounds that a Telecaster does that a Stratocaster won't do.
That's very true.
Unless of course you're like Paul Barrere from Little Feat, where you put a Telecaster bridge pickup in your Stratocaster and then you can do it all.
Yeah.
Lowell George did that too, actually.
Yeah.
It's the Lowell George mod. But that actually, I was also thinking Little Feat's another band that sort of, I was thinking like songs like Up on Cripple Creek and this last one just sound like songs that they would do. It's just, it's that sort of like swampy rock sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, one band was from LA and one's from Canada. It's sort of interesting that they were doing like swamp stuff.
Well, I mean, Levon Helm's from Arkansas. So,
yeah, that's right. He's from Arkansas, so yeah. So
they're a little more authentic.
Slightly. Yeah.
Anyway, the next song is called Rockin Chair. Kind of got distracted there. I was just kind of lost in the song. That was actually Levon Helm playing the mandolin on that.
Sort of like a folky bluegrass sort of thing going. I mean, I think they're trying to recreate the sound of sitting in a rocking chair on your front porch, just sort of jamming. Yeah. I think that's, again, they're really going for this visual of like the sort of Southern American sort of music and just life in general. They're trying to go for that visual, and I mean even the cover of the album and the songs, the subject matter and the sounds. I mean, trying to replicate a jaw harp. They were trying to get a jaw harp. I mean, what else would you? I mean, other for like klezmer music or something like that. Even then, it's more often you hear it in folk stuff from the South than you do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I've always kind of seen them that way. They're kind of not
even the
not
way they dressed at the time.
Band. Yeah,
no, they're not a country band. They're folk rock.
Yeah.
They're definitely sort of like a swamp rock band, but they were like a folk rock band. They sort of fell into the rock category, but rock had like the Doors were blown off of it in the mid 60s, and anything could be mixed in with rock. And it was partly because of the psychedelic era, but just everybody was throwing all ingredients into it. It was the thing, and that's what people were experimenting with.
Well, I think of the band, they're kind of like, they're sort of sort of a throwback. And I think maybe by the end of the 60s, people were kind of tired of the psychedelic rock stuff. And I think of bands like The Band and Creedence Clearwater Revival that were doing more, not retro, but like maybe bringing rock back to its roots again a little bit.
It was a little bit more of a pared down.
Yeah.
Taking it out of other thing. But you could definitely tell that there were these influences that it had gone through, that there were still elements sort of hanging around. Like there's still psychedelic elements in CCR stuff. Especially on that first album. The first album is actually still kind of psychedelic quite a bit, and it came out in 68, I think. So, still in the throes of that. But you could hear little bits of everything like that, even in Cosmos Factory. There's lots of stuff in there that was, influenced by stuff like that. But so that country rock and rockabilly and rock and roll, all of that stuff you would hear in stuff like CCR and these guys and going into and Little Feat and stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And these guys, I know The Band played Woodstock, but was CCR at Woodstock?
I'm thinking they weren't in the movie, but I think they did play Woodstock. Yeah, I think they were, they played, there was a lot of bands that played Woodstock.
Yeah.
Not all of them made the movie. So,
yeah. So they were definitely part of the scene, but they weren't, they weren't really, and they were accepted, but they were, they're not a psychedelic band,
not
but
in the strictest sense.
I mean, they went there. You can definitely, hear the influence in their music. I mean,
they were less a psychedelic band than say 10 years after were, but they both had this real early rock and roll thing going through them, and you could tell. This
is the band's second album, but they were they've been playing for 10 years at this point.
Of course,
so
they're veterans.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so over 10 years. I think they were started in the mid 50s with Ronnie Hawkins.
Yeah. So these are it's interesting that they're kind of like
they're geezers in the rocking chair.
Exactly. Yeah. But they're also being accepted by the younger,
of course,
younger crowd.
Yep.
Oh, maybe these guys were the bridge between the don't trust anyone over 30 people, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there was always a little bit of a. I don't even know how seriously it was taken. I mean, some people would say it mostly because it was sort of a joke, and other people would say it because honestly, they just. I mean, there's always been that tension between certain generations where one grew up with the world being a certain way, and then another one comes along and the world's completely different, and they can't see that doing the same thing doesn't work the same anymore. And that's the same thing happened to our generation and the generation after us. And
it's always going to happen. It always has happened, and it always will happen.
The waltz. People were freaking out over the waltz when it started because it was one of the first dances where men and women were supposed to be up against each other. It was scandalous at the time.
Jeez. What's next?
Oh, my pearls. They need clutching so bad.
What's next? So are we going to see a woman's pantaloons?
An ankle.
The horror.
Yep.
Anyway, moving on. The next song is called Lookout Cleveland. And they were playing really good on that.
Yeah, that was tight as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting, like when you hear that intro, it's very early rock and roll, but then the drums come in and it gets this sort of funky thing, but it's on the 1 and the 3. The kick is on the 1 and the 3, and it gives this really interesting rhythm to the thing, and it never feels wrong. It's just different, and it's just really cool.
Yeah,
you can hear that clavinet in the background too. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, the guitar work in that was great. The keyboards, I mean, they were just firing on all four cylinders on the
bass line was really good too.
Yeah.
I picked that up. Yeah.
They're really on their game on that one. I wonder, like, I'm sure, playing together, for, 15 years or however long it was at this point certainly helped them. I mean, Levon Helm wasn't their original drummer. They had a few other people. I don't know when he joined, actually.
He joined in the 50s. He was there in the 50s. I know that. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Because I know he wasn't on the Dylan tour.
Maybe he was away for a bit, but I know he was around in the band. I think he wasn't he on at least part of the Dylan tour.
I don't know, because there was another drummer that was what's his name? It's gonna drive me nuts if I don't. There was another drummer that played. I can't remember the name. It's Mickey something.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember his name. Anyway, they've been playing together. Anyway, most of the band have been playing together for a long time, and I'm sure that definitely helps. I wonder what it was like recording these guys and producing. Like it had to be pretty easy to be the producer on this. Just, have the band set up and play. It's like, yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, and just all you have to do is sort of adjust levels and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I doubt there was really anything that had to really fix. So, yeah. I was also thinking on the Dylan sessions, they also had Al Cooper on the organ, so as well. I don't think they had Garth Hudson.
Yeah, well, I don't know if the band ever recorded with Dylan on those albums, but I know they toured with him.
Yeah, I know. I think some of the band were in the studio with them. I just don't remember who. I can't remember. It's all a little blurry, but yeah.
Well, I know Al Cooper played organ on Like a Rolling Stone.
Yeah, he was primarily a guitar player at that time, and he just sort of sat down at the keyboard and sort of made up some of the stuff, and they just liked it, so they kept it. Yeah, and then he became a keyboard player.
Well, if you listen to that song, he's always a beat late. And the reason he's a beat late is because he's watching the guitar player to figure out what chord he needs to play.
Right.
So, but it works with the song. It's like, boom, with the organ. It sounds cool. Playing on two, coming in on two,
Yeah. No, it doesn't. It's not wrong. It absolutely fits. It's I think it would sound a little bit weird if you suddenly heard him come in on the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on Highway 61, the band did play, but they played on Blonde on Blonde. Rick Danko played bass. Robbie Robertson played guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And that's,
I think, as full albums, the Blonde on Blonde is probably my favorite of the three albums.
Yeah.
But I love a lot of the music on all of them. Some of my favorite songs are on some of the other ones, but I think as an album, Blonde on Blonde is the winner for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Well, maybe.
Yeah,
It's either Blonde on Blonde or Highway 61.
Highway 61's got a lot of good songs.
Yeah.
But I just thought, I've always loved the sort of Blonde on Blonde has this sort of feel to it. It just feels so together as an album.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's. I'm sure we'll.
That might show up.
Definitely.
That'd be nice if it came up.
Yeah. Anyway, we've got 3 songs left. So the next one is called Jawbone. Here we go.
All right.
Okay, that was cool.
Yeah. Very interesting time signatures through that.
Yeah, that was a little more psychedelic, I guess. But still, still kind of bluesy and rooty, and one of the things that I noticed is there was one particular part where it was, instead of the bass and drums driving the rhythm, it was the piano and the drums, and the bass and the guitar were sort of doing in unison, playing the melody.
Yeah.
Which was a cool choice. I always like it when, like, Paul McCartney is sort of does more melodies on the bass rather than just doing the rhythm. I always like it when bass players sort of take a melodic approach.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Melodic bass players have always got, like, there's something about, a good bass rhythm going along is always, I just love it. But when you throw in some of those more melodic notes, play a bit on the dusty end of the fretboard, you get some really interesting sort of just a different effect when it comes to it can completely transform a song.
Yeah.
Give it a little bit more life.
Yeah. I always think about we talk a lot about like we dissect a lot of music, and we talk about like melodic bass lines and just different parts. And I always wonder, someone who's listening to this who doesn't know anything about music, I wonder if they are able to to hear that, or if it's just kind of like all these elements are kind of added up and they like the song. They don't know why they like the song, but I know why they like the song, but they can't quite articulate. But it's just, I always wonder, like, what these different parts, interesting parts, what it sounds like to someone who doesn't necessarily know much about music.
Well, all I got to think back is to when I was younger and I didn't know much about music. Yeah, sometimes it was sort of hard to sort of pinpoint what it was that you exactly like it, or why it was you exactly like it, what it is you liked about it, say.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of do know what it's like. It is, for me, I find it a little bit more fulfilling to being able to know what it is, personally, about a song that it is, and I can actually pinpoint to what it is, because part of me wants to, make music of my own, and if I know what it is I like about something, then I can sort of use that idea in something maybe I would want to do. Mm-hmm. That's sort of the way I approach it. It's just like, oh, that's a great idea, I could do something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I always wonder, what, I guess, it's not too hard to remember what it was like. But even then, like, I don't know if it must be like watching a film with a filmmaker, and, picking up the different shots they use and all the, they're...
Oh, they'll be analyzing it in a way that completely goes over our heads. Yeah. They'll be pinpointing different sort of framing techniques. They might even be able to figure out, oh, they used bounces for that, and they, that's got a filter that does such and such on this, and that's how it is. And all is that what you're seeing is making you feel something.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's the same way with music. What you're hearing is making you feel something. Right. And you don't have to know what it is to enjoy it.
Exactly.
But it is kind of fun when you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I almost feel like it doesn't ruin the music for me, but I almost feel like it would ruin a movie for me, because it would pull me out of the being within the, because the movie it's trying to tell a story, but it seems to be more essential to movie watching experience than it would be to a music listening experience, where you can get the story behind a song, but it's not like the song is, it can transport you, but it's not transporting you to the same thing. It's without, the visuals the same way as you might have visuals in your head, and it sort of depends on what part of your brain you shut off or turn on. You have a little more control over that, whereas a movie, it's kind of, they're showing you they're showing you basically what they want you, how they want you to experience, and that's the whole point for having all these different tricks. And to know all these tricks almost kind of feels like, I don't know, maybe it's probably different for some people. Some people probably pull it apart and say, oh yeah, they find it really fun being able to pull it apart, and because maybe they aspire to make movies, they want to know these tricks too. So and they really enjoy it. In fact, they might enjoy certain things, like people think, oh, that's a crap movie, and this other guy comes along, what do you mean that's a crap movie? It's a brilliant movie. Did you see the way they filmed this, or see the way they filmed that? Yeah, but the acting was shit. Yeah, the acting was shit, but the filmography, the filmography, cinematography, that's the word.
Yeah,
cinematography was awesome. Yeah, that's true.
I recently, maybe a year or two, or maybe 3 years ago, at some point in the last few years, I watched Citizen Kane.
Mm-hmm.
And I can, first of all, it's not a great movie, story wise.
Always liked it, but
it's okay.
It seems a little, especially by today's tastes, it's a little bit it doesn't fall in line with say what you would expect from a movie experience today.
But I can see why a lot of movie geeks liked it, and it's because, first of all, it was a technical achievement and a huge leap forward in terms of filmmaking. And a lot of new techniques were developed in that for that movie. So I can understand why film geeks like that movie, is because it's a instead of being a film to enjoy and to be immersed in the story, it's more like a historical document of certain techniques being used for filming. So
I sort of see what you're talking about, but I've always kind of liked the story.
It is interesting. It's a bit long.
It's amazing. There was no standard length for movies for the first half century.
No.
It really didn't take until they were really trying to I guess it started with like probably drive-ins, where there was really the it's funny, probably the B movies and horror flicks of that thing probably dictated a standard feature-length movie more than, say, more highbrow stuff did, because that was just what the industry requested, and they were trying to pump out as much, just make as much money at a time, and they wanted to put 2 back-to-back, which is where the back-to-back features used to come from. Mm-hmm. Even when I was a kid, we would go to the drive-in theater, and there were 2 movies back-to-back. They wanted the movies not too short, obviously, because it's good. An hour and a half they figured was pretty good. So if you're there for like 3 hours, you're getting 2 movies, and it was basically, they just sort of, a ballpark. It was never like straight on an hour and a half, but that was in general, that was the average movie length. I guess it would probably the mid 50s where that was really starting to become a standard thing. This Christmas we watched White Christmas, and that movie's got to be close to 3 hours.
Yeah, you don't want a double feature for 2 3-hour movies. You don't want to be, at the drive-in for 6 hours.
Yeah.
That would be a little much.
Anyway, we somehow got into films.
Yeah, I don't know how we got here, but
we're comparing it to music.
Yeah, we've got 2 more songs. And this next one is called The Unfaithful Servant. Cool. I like the horns at the end. That was really cool. And I liked the guitar playing on that was really interesting. He was doing that like staccato picking like you would on a mandolin, but it was on the guitar. That was cool.
Yeah. Yeah, the horn section, there was that saxophone. It might have been, I think this one might have been more of a tenor sax, but it was playing alongside a French horn, I think, in there. Yeah. So that was just really neat blend of sounds. It gives it sort of like a little bit of a softer edge to it. Mm-hmm. So when it like sort of hides in the background a little bit, it's there, you can hear it, but it's not, again, it's a little bit softer than even most horn sections would be. It's just got a different edge to it.
Yeah, it doesn't have that the harsh, because the saxophone can be kind of harsh sounding.
A trumpet will pierce.
Yeah,
a French horn has got like that lower. It's like you took the tone knob of something like a trumpet and turned it down or something like that. It's got that low timbre to it, I guess. It's just a really neat sound.
Yeah. And you know, the funny thing is that I noticed too, this is Rick Danko singing that, and you know, his performance was great. He wasn't always on key, but that kind of worked. You know, it was this kind of loose, sort of swampy kind of.
It's stuff like this where voices like them and people like, well, you know, people like Bob Dylan and Neil Young thrive doing stuff like this too. I mean, that's what their voices work for. Yeah. You wouldn't want to throw Neil Young in like an opera or something like that. No. Everybody'd walk away.
No, yeah.
I think he would walk away too. But yeah.
I just had a vision of an opera crowd, and Neil Young comes out with his black Les Paul to get some feedback going.
What, he got a helmet with horns on it?
Sure.
And he's
yeah.
I would love to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's doing Carmen or something.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's like it is a lot like what was I gonna say? Oh, his voice like being off key and kind of out of tune. That because this song in particular and a lot of songs on the album does have that, like you were saying, that sort of front porch kind of feel. You know, it's sort of like. Maybe this song, or maybe what they were going for, is sort of like regular folks just getting together and singing on a Sunday afternoon or something, you know? And that's his voice, you know, being off key, that just works for that sort of feeling.
Right. But again, he's never that off key, and it's always just enough. It gives that dissonance that gives it like a realism. Because again, sometimes if a voice is too on, it's actually off-putting. It's too robotic, and people go, "What the hell am I listening to? Like, who programmed this?"
Right. No, exactly. I'm not saying he's a horrible singer or anything like that. I'm just saying
it's a very human voice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's exactly. Yeah, it's the human element.
Yeah,
I guess. Yeah. No, I thought it was a great song.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we have one more song left, and it's called "King Harvest Has Surely Come."
All right, I think that one's actually my favorite.
Yeah.
That's just a great song, and I don't even care that it was recorded like a demo. I don't care.
No. That's part of its charm, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was cool. I like the two organs, one playing the low notes, one playing the high notes.
Yeah. unless it was Garth Hudson's two hands. But oftentimes the band would have two organ players.
Well, yeah, there's Richard Manuel who would play the keyboards, and Garth Hudson would also play.
Yeah.
So I think one was on one organ and one was on the other.
Yeah, it could be.
Unless it was overdubbed, I don't know.
It's not impossible, but again, if they got two people, they might as well use them.
Yeah.
You're getting paid for something.
Yeah, exactly. And what I liked about that, it was really heavy in the low end. Like
yes.
The low, like I said, the low notes on the organ, the bass and the drums were really, tight on the low end.
The bass had a thump to it that I actually really like in that. I don't know if that was a byproduct of the recording, but I just like it.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. And again, Robbie Robertson doing some really great guitar work on that.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. He's not a flashy player, but he's really really comes up with some interesting lines.
He's a tasty player. He's definitely a capable player, but he doesn't feel the need to show off. It's just not important to him.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's never lacking.
Yeah. He's great. I mean, the whole band. I mean, there's a reason they're called the band, because they're top-notch musicians. They're one of those bands. It's funny. It's sometimes I think they're overrated, and then sometimes I think they're underrated. You know what I mean? It's
Again, it back, like I've said that about the Beatles. It's like everybody says they're so great, but oftentimes what they show as like their high marks is it's always like a little bit. It makes me wonder. It's like, I don't know if you're really listening to what makes them great. I mean, I guess it's just. I guess it probably comes down to personal opinion, because again, what they find great and what I find great is probably going to be different anyway. But it has always sometimes puzzled me what people find really excellent. And then I got to listen through other things. Just like, well, I agree this band is great, but it's not for the reasons you think they are.
Yeah. Well, I think with the Beatles, people, maybe a lot of the time people think they're great because of their popularity.
Yeah.
But once you actually listen to what they're doing, it's, this is really great.
There's actually some genius going on here.
Yeah. And I wonder if it's the same thing with the band. I mean, people hear,
people hear The Weight 100 times on the radio.
Yeah.
And you get sick of it. And everybody and their brother and their former roommate will play, at a local bar playing The Weight. I mean, it's one of those. There's three songs that get overplayed in our particular area where we're from. There's The Weight, Folsom Prison, and what was the other, Wagon Wheel.
Oh yeah.
All three of those get Anyway, one time I saw a band play all three. I felt like strangling somebody. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Not that those are bad songs.
No.
But come on. Play something different.
Something different. I want to know your deep cuts.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, with the band, I actually like some of their later stuff too. Like I like Stage Fright and Life is a Carnival and some of those songs.
And those are hits.
Those are hits, but they're lesser known hits.
Right. Well, it's from the lesser known period, other than Last Waltz was 77, so that was towards the end of that. So, and that's probably one of the biggest things they ever put out.
Yeah. And even that people look at the Last Waltz not as a concert, basically the band's farewell. But they look at it as a concert featuring Bob Dylan, Neil Young, Joni Mitchell, Van Morrison. Not that those artists aren't great, but that wasn't the focus of it. But I think people that's what they like about it.
I don't know. It's maybe for some people. Yeah, I know a lot of people who I think the Last Waltz, because again, they're watching a great band back these people.
Mm-hmm.
And they're watching what is actually a really great concert. People doing, there is some real magic happening on that stage when they're playing that stuff.
Yeah.
And Rodney Hawkins was there too.
That's true.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. The band. They're a great band.
Yes.
And this album, I want to go back and listen to Big Pink just to compare the two, but this album was really great too. There were a few surprises on there, but it's exactly what I was expecting. I have heard this album not in a long time, but it was just a great album.
I thought it was sort of interesting, like King Harvest, this last song. It almost feels like it was a bonus song tacked on the end, but it's probably one of my favorite tracks. It's just so good. Yeah. It's actually a really strong closer, but again, it feels like a demo. They went, oh, that's pretty good. Let's put that on.
Tack it on at the end. Yeah, no, it's and I think that was actually released as a single. I could be wrong, but yeah.
Maybe it was a B-side.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah.
This is a great album.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much for listening. If you made it this far, you can check us out on at polyphonicpress.com. You can drop us a line at polyphonicpressmusic@gmail.com. And if you want to help out and support the show, you can do that at buymeacoffee.com/polyphonicpress with a burp in there. And
at Polyphonic.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's pretty much it. I'm Jeremy Boyd.
And I'm John Van Dyke.
Take it easy.